Welcome to today's webinar on living well with dementia. What I wish I'd known when I was diagnosed. So today's session will be an interview type of format, which is a little different from usual. And my name is Lori Kelly. I'm the Provincial Coordinator, Provincial Program Operations for the Alzheimer's Society of BC, and I'm today's host. And on that note, I am going to stop sharing my slides and introduce our presenters for today. So Myrna Norman, give a wave when your name comes up. Myrna Norman, Craig Burns, and Jim Mann are all members of the Alzheimer's Society's leadership group of people living with dementia, and all three of them are active and passionate advocates. Like most people living with dementia, each of our presenters have different living situations, different diagnoses, and different journeys. Welcome to all three of you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lori.
So in this session today, I'm going to ask you to share your experience of being diagnosed with dementia and what you've learned since that time that you want others who are perhaps just starting on their own dementia journeys, what you would like them to know. So let's start by just going around to each one of you to reflect on your own diagnoses. Tell us a little bit about what the process of getting a diagnosis was like for you. And Myrna, I'll start with you.
Alrighty, so I'm Myrna Norman, and I was diagnosed about 13 years ago, re-diagnosed 10 years ago, re-diagnosed 7 or 8 years ago. And now when I'm doing things that are inappropriate, I can laugh. And I have to tell you one. I had neuralgia last night on the side of my head, and it said I should put a little hot pad there and it would relieve the pain. So my grandson had bought me this little thing about this big, and I put it in the microwave and heated it and put it on my head. And then at some point, I took it off because the pain had seemed to subside. And then the pain was back, so I searched. I searched the chair, under my husband's chair, in the kitchen, on the counter, everywhere. You know, when I went to bed that night, I found it. I had tucked it inside my bra, and I had no memory of doing that. It's so one has to laugh. It is kind of funny. Before my diagnosis came, I had some thoughts and behaviors that caused me personal shame, controlling my anger and even my rage, and illicit things going on in my brain. The confusion, the anger so deep inside, it showed on my face. It was too much for me to hide. Feeling sorrow and loss of control, screaming and stomping about who I should blame. And then the diagnosis, temporal dementia, frontal temporal kind. 8 years to live, he said. Go home and get your affairs in order. Life as you know it is very thin. Presumptive mourning. I learned that word then. Yeah, it's true. We can mourn for people while they're still alive. Shock and doubt became a short trip, but not on my route. Advocating for myself, I soon took on a new life. Advocating for others would soon suffice. So, as horrible as that period of time went prior to dementia, I'm sure most people find it almost comforting to know that there's a reason for their behaviors. The process of diagnoses, I think, is dreadful. I think it's terrible that I think they should give us a manual. I was chatting with somebody a couple of days ago, and he was diagnosed with cancer, and he was given a manual. So he didn't have to make frequent visits to the doctor. He could look up what was going on in his manual. And he had a friend that he could call, somebody that was like a support person. So there's many positive things we can do if we can just get through that initial diagnosis. We can live well with dementia. We really can. We have choices. I didn't know that when I was diagnosed. I had no idea I had any choices, but we have rights. And along with all that comes responsibilities. We'll talk more about that later. Go ahead, next host.
Thank you very much, Myrna. Craig, what about you? What was your journey to getting a diagnosis like?
Oh, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here. Thanks, Norman. Myrna, you always make me smile and give me a lightheartedness. I first went to my physician in 2006. It was I really can't remember the specifics, but I was having difficulty with my memory in my workplace. I was in a management role and I was having a tough time with that. The physician listened to me. He kind of attributed it to stress. Stress was the difficulty probably in my management role. So that was that. I went home. I returned in 2009, again, memory problems. That physician then had a staff person administer a Mocha test. And Mocha is the Montreal Cognitive Assessment. Some of you probably are quite familiar with that. It's a score out of 30. I believe I scored 26 or 27, something like that. They don't give you a copy of what they've assessed, but it was inconclusive, really. So that was the end of that. Still struggling along. I really can't remember all the difficulties at the workplace. I had, different responsibilities. But in 2014, through my workplace, I guess you would call it program, I consulted with a psychologist because I was really dealing with depression and anxiety. It was really becoming quite difficult. Then in 2016 was really the year when things kind of came together or fell apart, however you look at it. Memory, confusion, depression and anxiety, all of them. I was referred from the general practitioner to a psychiatrist who's very good. He specializes in dementia. I spent quite a bit of time with him, a few different appointments. He diagnosed dementia, probable Alzheimer's. Now, at the same time as I was spinning my wheels and trying to figure out what was going on, I had seen that there was a clinical drug trial that was going to start. This is the Biogen study, which you may be familiar with. That drug is aducanumab. And I went through all the hoops to qualify for that. And there was quite a number of things, including a MRI scan and including a PET scan, positron emission topography scan. They're not real nice, but anyways, I qualified. Now, the qualifying thing for that, for Alzheimer's, is it was looking for identifying the APOE marker. So that's just medical terminology. But because that was there, then I qualified for the clinical drug trial. So from the psychiatrist and from the drug trial, there was my diagnosis of Alzheimer's. And it's coming up now to 5 years since that period of time.
Great. Thanks very much, Craig. Last but not least, Jim, what about you?
Thanks, Lori. I was 58 when I was diagnosed, which might have been a complicating factor for the diagnostic process, but I had the good fortune to have a doctor with whom I had a relationship. I'd been his patient for over 30 years. He knew me well. He was also aware of the health issues of my parents. When I presented him with a piece of paper with my recent cognitive challenges and experiences, like getting lost and disoriented in a small airport, he took me seriously because he knew they were out of normal range for me. Reflecting on that first experience of confronting the years of covering up and creating creative solutions to, for example, driving with no idea where I was going and why, it was a tough reality. But it was made easier because the note I gave my doctor had the situational details, symptoms, which he took seriously. Following his initial diagnosis of dementia, I went to the Alzheimer's clinic at UBC, where I admit there was an element of concern I had that the process would not go well and would be long and drawn out. Thank goodness I was listened to and taken seriously, and the rest is history, as they say. When I prepare for an event like this webinar, for example, and I think back to the doctors with whom I have interacted, I feel fortunate. But at the same time, I think about many people who go from appointment to appointment over many years seeking answers to their cognitive challenges and getting more and more frustrated. I also think about the doctor who spoke to a friend of mine at a conference where people with dementia were included on the agenda giving presentations, and where I was fortunate to be one of the presenters. He expressed surprise at the presenters' capabilities and questioned their diagnosis of dementia since they were so articulate. He told her they look normal.
Thanks, Jim. So, just like living with dementia, each of you have different diagnosis experience. So, thinking back to that diagnosis and that process, what do you wish you had known back then? That is, if you could write a letter to yourself or to other people who were just receiving the diagnosis today, what would you want to say? Craig, I'll let you start this time.
Thanks, Lori. Well, I would have to say after that diagnosis and the entry into the clinical drug trial, which provided hope, I would say I just fell into a funk. I was just, I don't know what the words are. I was devastated. I knew there was something wrong, but now that I had it confirmed, I was in a difficult place. Now, I should mention, and this is not a free advertisement for the Alzheimer's Society, but I knew where to go because I hadn't mentioned earlier that my mother had Alzheimer's and I was her care partner for 10 years after her diagnosis. So I had an informal education. But anyways, the funk, I connected. I connected with people. I connected with professionals who would, so to speak, hold my hand and help me see this through. So what I wish I had known then, and they spoke into my life, into my heart, was, guess what? You can you can continue to have a fulfilling life with dementia. It's not over. There's lots ahead. There's lots of opportunities, and I'm so thankful that those people, I would say, they poured into my life. They, they were staff, they were volunteers, but they, and I was, I was a hopeful person, so I wasn't saying, oh no, I don't think I can do that. I grabbed on. I jumped into what they were telling me. The other thing that I wish I had known then was that people will not know how to respond to you. When you tell them you have dementia, the three of us as presenters today have shared stories in the past of when we tell people we have dementia, and we've gotten different, each can speak to that. We've each had different ones that have given a response to that, but I'll leave it at that. You can, I have a whole new network of, we'll probably get into it. I have a whole new network of people that I haven't met them personally. I've met them on Zoom, WebEx, different things like that across the country. I'm vitally involved in lots of different things that are of interest to me. We'll talk about that a little bit later, I think. But yeah, I live with dementia, but I'm not letting it stop me. It's my brain is still deteriorating. I can see that, but and I have my not so great days, but I keep moving along.
Thanks so much, Craig. So Jim, over to you. Thinking back, what is it that you wish you'd known, or what would you tell yourself when you were diagnosed?
Well, my letter would start, Dear Jim, strap yourself in and get ready for the ride of your life. Having been with my wife alongside my mother for 20 or so years following my father's death, I had seen Alzheimer's up close and learned a lot about the disease, or so I thought. Through my own journey with Alzheimer's, I now realize what I learned from my mother's experiences was basic and really not much more than knowing there was such a thing as Alzheimer's. I did not understand and appreciate many of the challenges it presented her, which I look back now as a personal disappointment, recognizing I could have handled some situations a bit better. An important takeaway today is the true meaning of the phrase, when you have met one person with dementia, you have met one person with dementia. The experiences of others with Alzheimer's or other dementias are unique to that individual. As with life itself, do not get bogged down comparing yourself and how your dementia progresses with another person. That helps no one. Now, what I would tell myself is to keep breathing and know that you are going to experience a string of really good days when you question if you really do have Alzheimer's, and you're going to have a string of really bad days when the reality of Alzheimer's will slap you across the face. Know this and be prepared. That's why I would highlight in my letter in big capital letters, find a purpose. Find a reason to get out of bed in the morning. There will be things to do that you will enjoy and will keep you busy. You will then meet other people, amazing people, and you will do things you never in your wildest imagination thought you would do. So when you get the diagnosis, don't go home and shut yourself off. Let people know what you are dealing with and that you intend to keep going. With that little bit of communication, you will begin your journey positively. Yes, there will be disorientation and adjustments to your activities of daily living, but ultimately, coming to grips with the need to keep living and doing so sensibly will be a celebrated triumph. You can do this.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I feel like clapping too, Craig. Myrna, last but not least, over to you. What would you tell yourself, I guess, for you at many points with getting a diagnosis?
You're
Oh,
on mute.
I think you're muted.
Sorry, everyone. One of the things that helped me the most when I was diagnosed was that my husband was going away on a trip. And so I got some material from the computer. I put it in an envelope and said, read this on your way or when you get there. And I stayed home by myself for 10 days and I wallowed and I cried and I blamed everybody that had ever come into my vision. And I let my body and my mind feel all those emotions. And when it was done, when my husband returned, I was a much calmer, more ready to proceed with this new life after I had learned more. So my second poem of the day, in case you realize my first speech was a bit of a poem. So here we go. I searched the books and the pamphlets, and I searched the computer too. I was looking for encouragement and I was looking for joy, but to no avail. Cancer, heart disease, and arthritis had words to offer comfort and hope. But dementia stood absent from these notes in kind of a way of already being erased. Yes, without hope of some positive news, without even being included, it seems that society has no patience to learn, to share, to include due to stigma. But wait, we can change the scene. We can make the change. We can all work together to share our stories, some sad truths and some funny, funny times. Can we all pledge to understand, to search the facts, to live well, to give of ourselves for the sake of others, and be our community's brothers? And I think it was Craig was talking about the tests that they give you. Probably many of you have gone through that. And at a support group that was offered by Alzheimer's, we taught each other the answers to those questions. And when I went to my neurologist and I could do the test very well, she queried me and I said, well, we get together. There's not a whole lot to do at our support group, so we teach each other. And so she changed the test radically, but we can still live and we can still find joy. And so I'm not sure if I would do it differently. If I could say to myself, Myrna, when you get your diagnosis, this is what you need or should have done, it would have been for the doctor's office to hand me a manual or a pamphlet or an envelope of information that I could take home to understand. Because saying to me, this is your diagnosis, go home, get your affairs in order, any questions, was not okay. And so I've been an advocate for some time, and that's one of the things I need to change. Because you wouldn't say that to anyone else. When I was diagnosed with ankylosing spondylitis, I got to see a film about it. So I wasn't frightened because I had knowledge. I believe education is the best. And so I'm not meaning to plug Alzheimer's either, but that was the first place that gave me information, set me up with a support group. And that was the best thing that ever could have happened. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I'm just going to throw it open to all of you, all three of you. So are there other things that you would like people to know? Or what are some of the misconceptions about dementia that you think people might have that you think makes hearing a diagnosis harder, a high diagnosis of dementia harder? That was kind of a mouthful, but I hope that made sense.
Well, probably just to say it in a different way, get informed. Don't fixate on all the information, because you'll never get all the information and you'll give your brain an overload. But be informed and ask questions. This one's not easy to do. I have to tell myself all the time, relax, just let your shoulders go down. Do those deep breathing things. That really helps for me. And if you're isolated, unisolate yourself. Make some new friends. Get to know other people. Over the years, we developed good friendships, very close friendships. I find I still have those close friendships. People with dementia that I know, we have a connection. So connect with somebody that you want to get to know. You admire something about them. You see what they have done. You say, well, that's them. Well, you don't have to replicate them, but find out for yourself. That's my suggestion as far as supporting yourself. Relax and get out there. Don't stay in your room. Don't stay static.
And some of you are probably sitting there thinking, but how do I get in touch with somebody? How do I find a friend? How do I make a connection? And I can tell you the first phone call should be Alzheimer's. The second call should be your senior center. A lot of cities now have community, help me out guys with language here, Lori. Communities are dementia-friendly communities. Yeah. So there's lots of information out there. Use your computer. Don't believe everything that's on there, but make the effort to get more information.
Great.
And COVID puts a kink in all of this.
Yes.
But even if it's possible, because I mean, one of the things that I do is physical activity at the gym. I know I follow all the rules. I'm following all Dr. Henry's guidelines now. I'm not in any group fitness things. I do my own workout. But there you make some connections with other people, and that's a good thing. because you're doing a couple of things. You're getting to know someone, you're also exercising.
And I think that for this, Laurie, there are a couple of quotes that I think are really valuable here. And the first is from the American Association of Retired Persons, and an article about Tony Bennett and his diagnosis of dementia that included a recommendation from his neurologist that Mr. Bennett keep singing and performing because it would keep him on his toes and also significantly stimulate his brain. And I quote, backstage, Tony could seem utterly mystified about his whereabouts, but the moment he heard the announcer's voice boom, "Ladies and gentlemen, Tony Bennett," he would transform himself into performance mode, stride out into the spotlight, smiling and acknowledging the audience's applause, and start singing, end quote. I personally like that model. A life with dementia is actually performance mode. The other quote is from Dr. Jonathan Evans, a geriatrician, in a video entitled Person-Centered Matters, where he noted, dementia doesn't take away your ability to be a human, your humanness, and it shouldn't take away your humanity. On the contrary, he said, it often brings it out. Even though dementia is something that affects the brain, dementia does not equal or result in a loss of intelligence. On the contrary, people use their intelligence to overcome some of the impairments that dementia causes. He ended saying, while there are many losses people experience from dementia, dementia doesn't make you stupid. Dementia doesn't rob you of your ability to experience joy, to be happy.
That's
Great.
awesome, Jim.
I agree.
That is awesome. Something that came through really clearly in our discussions before this presentation is that each of you feel strongly that a diagnosis of dementia is not the end. Each of you have said that already today, and that there are opportunities that have opened up for you because of dementia, not just in spite of it. Can you speak to that a bit more? And while you talk, I'm going to be showing some slides that demonstrate visually a little bit more about living well with dementia. And so, Jim, I'll start with you. Tell us a bit about some of the various experiences and opportunities you've had since your diagnosis, and a bit about how important you feel it is to be an advocate.
Thanks, Laurie. For me, the most rewarding experience I have been given goes back to the 2013-2014 campaign, Jim's Push for a Plan, advocating for a provincial dementia strategy. This was the Society's campaign that I was most proud to be associated with, and it certainly made an impact with the government of the day. Additionally, I have been privileged to speak at meetings and conferences across the country to medical practitioners, healthcare providers, families, and business professionals about living with dementia and related topics. I take these occasions seriously, viewing each opportunity as an education session offering a perspective that for many is not one they've heard. And I've worked with researchers like Dr. Lillian Hung, who's shown here with one of our research project posters, on some wonderful and meaningful projects. I've learned a lot about research and am grateful to the researchers that have had the patience to include me.
Great. Thanks very much, Jim. I was slow on the slides, so I'm going to just run through a few.
And in fact, she's on my lap right now.
Oh, is she? Oh, that's wonderful. Uh, I really love these photos. Just
And life
life.
goes on.
And life goes on.
Yeah.
Myrna, over to you. You recently published a book. Tell us a bit about that and how that and many other aspects of your life relate to this point we're discussing about things that dementia has brought into your life.
You know, it's absolutely, totally amazing. I have been a keynote speaker, and that speech is now being broadcast. I've done a commercial. That was such a cool experience. I have written lots of poetry. I never knew I could write poetry. Somebody just asked me if I wanted to try, and I did. I've painted. I've had this wonderful life. Oh, look at my paintings there. And I did want to go back and say, for all the people that are watching that have a dementia, and you try something and I try something and it screws up and I become frustrated. I just learned recently that one could try again at several months down the road or a year down the road. I've managed to bake a chocolate cake yesterday all by myself. And that to me is marvelous. But I've been really fortunate. I love gardening, and I love being happy, and I hope I share that joy with others. I wrote a book, and it what I really wanted this book to do was I wanted to offer strategies to people. And I wish that I had offered more strategies than I did in the book. But that was my whole thing. I believe that when we're going through this process, we need tips and strategies to help us get through every day. Oh, look at the flower on my black vest. That was from my baking my cake. You should have seen the kitchen if you think that bit of flour was something. Anyway, we do need practical ways to make our life easier so that we don't just sit in front of the television, because I have done that. And 20 pounds later, I'm not sitting in the front of the television anymore. There's so many basic things like being outdoors. It's just really important to do those things, not to sort of get lost in what you cannot do, but rejoice in the things you still can do. I don't know if I answered that question at all, but I'm happy saying what I said.
I think you answered it perfectly. Thank you. And Craig, over to you. What's come into your life because of dementia that you value?
Well, I've been finding my way over the years as far as something that comes across on the email or something that I see on the web that relates or is related to dementia. So I would look at it this way. There's three areas that I am passionate about or I'm interested in and that motivates me to get involved. One of them is research. I mentioned the clinical trial. Well, I'm the guinea pig, so there I'm in research. I'm participating in that. There are different organizations that I volunteer for. That's where I get my Zoom experience, especially these days. There's an organization, Canadian Consortium of Neurological Aging. What a handle! 350 reachers across Canada, but I get to participate in reviewing potential research projects, and I'm very much interested in that. I mentioned the Alzheimer's Society of BC. They have research program as well as the Society of Canada, and I'm involved in that. So that's an interest area for me, because that's not for today, that's not for me, that's for the future. And I want to have a view of the future, not just sort of wrap it all around me and say, well, it has to be all about me. It's not all about me. You know, life will go on. The second area that really turns my crank, if we use that word, is education. some of my work experience, I've worked with students, I've worked with university students, and so one of my involvements is with UBC Okanagan Medical School. I'm a volunteer patient for them. I'm kind of like a guinea pig. When we're not in COVID, I'm in a classroom situation with them where they poke, prod, delve, and do all kinds of things. It's all good. It's all good. They're small classes of 8. Now it's on Zoom, so it's a bit different. What I want to do is I want students to understand dementia. I figure if you're a young person and you're in first year, you're in second year, you're just on your way of going into your residency, I would like to have a bit of input into your life so that you understand from me, not just from book learning, what dementia is, to help you prepare for your careers. And young people are so exciting because they're young, they're vital, they listen. Everybody listens, but they listen. I hope they're listening. So that really fulfills me. The third area is what we would call elder law, which is kind of an odd term. That's probably not a word that we use all that much. But elder law is assisting seniors to understand the law, to understand their rights, to understand the responsibilities, and also, because we have to be upfront about it, we need to think about, okay, I'm a senior, maybe I have dementia. What do I need to put in place for end of life? What do I need to put in place in terms of those, I've lost my train of thought here. Those documents, those representation agreements, those documents. Again, I didn't write it down here. I should have. You get a good idea as far as where I'm at here. But I see that, and I'm involved with an organization here in BC that works to that end. Now, lastly, I'm getting to, I mentioned I'm getting to know other folks with dementia. Well, as in my reading, I've run across an individual who I've now met online on Zoom. His name is Granville Johnson. I don't know if Granville's on here. He doesn't know I'm going to say this, but I looked at a quote of his. It's not rocket science. It just struck me very clearly. And this is what the quote is. Dementia makes you a teacher. You have to teach other people as much as you have to learn. And I thought about that, and I thought, exactly. Now, with that, I'm working on a committee with Granville. Granville's an artist as well. We're putting something together to address stigma and discrimination about dementia. So there we go. It's up on the screen there. Thank you, Laurie. Yeah, there's Granville. Granville lives in northern BC. Let's see, east of Prince George. Anyways, that's something that I've learned, and I have to take to heart to say, yeah, don't stand there like a teacher, but what you're imparting is you're telling people what it's like, and that's exactly what I believe that we're doing today. We're teaching each other and what we've learned and what we would like other people to understand as you're going through it as a care partner, caregiver, or a person living with dementia.
Great. Thank you so much, you guys. I'm going to just go through, there's a couple of comments have come in, a couple of questions. Generally, people are just feeling very empowered and really very thankful to the three of you. One thing I want to, sorry, I'm just scrolling through. Thank you, Sarah, who's been answering questions as it goes along. But someone says people can relate to dementia because even if they're young, they may experience dementia-like problems with their memory and reasoning skills. Usually I find they will articulate this and say, that's funny because I experienced that problem. I can't remember names. I get frustrated with learning something new, etc., etc. This can come from teenagers because their brain is still developing, and this can come from adults in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. So an interesting comment. Any feedback?
I want to add to that, in as much as a lot of people I talk to that are around my age, or younger, even sort of from 50, maybe even 45 and up, say, oh, I have dementia moments. My memory isn't as good as it was. Maybe I have the beginning of this. And I think there really needs to be some teaching done so people understand dementia is way more than memory loss. Dementia is, when I was explaining at the beginning, my little heater for my head, I had put it somewhere. This morning I took 2 medicines that I should have only taken one of. I have no ability to remember if I've done something that was just 10 seconds ago or half an hour ago. And that is totally different from forgetting something, but walking back into the room and then remembering. The sort of loss that most of us with types of dementia is so completely different. And so that's when one needs, I think, that's when I knew that I had to go to a doctor, because even though memory was only one portion of it, my rages were horrendous. And I was trying to think of strategies to stop those rages, or to help my husband understand that they weren't pushed at him. And so there's much more to actually having a dementia than periodic losses. Anxiety when you're a student is really tough, trying to get those exams in and all of that. And even as we're older, we're so busy thinking about, did I get all my groceries, that we may forget where we put the car keys. But it's different for a dementia. It is like it never happened. It's just a piece of that brain is missing. The neuron signal did not go to where it was supposed to go. It never made the connection. So we can't make it come back.
Really well said, Myrna. Craig, Jim, anything more on that?
Only one comment. There's a word that folks use, and they don't mean any ill will by it. I sort of prefacing my statement here. There's a word that folks will use, and I try not to get bent out of shape when they say, "Oh, you suffer from dementia." I take a deep breath and I say, well, probably expressing that would be a bit better by saying I live with dementia. Let's be gentle. I don't know who all is online here, but let's be gentle with each other, and let's be gentle with others when that word comes along. But let's try and eliminate that word when we speak of dementia or those who live with dementia. I much more prefer, yes, it may seem like suffering sometime, but I just don't see that it's a good descriptor in our everyday life when we interact one with another. That's just a little bug in everybody's ear. I'm sure many of you would, we could have a discussion on that one. Because I did have someone the other day use that phrase with me, and I had to catch my mouth before I spoke. Anyways.
Well, isn't it time for me to tell my favorite story about?
Oh, is this a story about the doctor?
It is. I think I need to share that.
Yes.
So I was at a medical event, and there were a lot of doctors there, and there were some people like me being advocates for people with dementia. And at our half break, we had a chance to sort of interact with each other. And I walked over to a doctor and said hello and asked him what he thought about the evening so far, and told him I had dementia. And he said, "You don't look like you have dementia." And I was quite aghast, and I said, "And you don't look like a doctor." And now I wouldn't have said that because I'm so much more mature. But, I like what, Craig, I love what you say. We live with it. When you have cancer, you are not cancer. You live with cancer, and we live with a dementia.
Well said.
Myrna, I quote you quite often with that story. to get a rise out of people, to lighten the atmosphere, and to just say, this is the way it is sometimes, you know? Yeah.
Where's my check?
It's in the mail.
So true. People are
See,
saying,
and there we go, Myrna and I and all of us here. You know, that's another thing. You gotta have a sense of humor. You'll die, you'll wither.
Yeah.
You have to have a sense of humor. Throw it over your shoulder and just keep going.
yeah, people are saying things like this entire presentation needs to be made public. Well, fortunately, we are recording today and it will be up on our website within a week. And we are hoping to have these three back in about 4 months, in 3 months, I guess, in June, to talk. And Myrna, you had talked about strategies, and certainly that's what we're hoping for the next part in 3 months is kind of living with dementia, living well with dementia, and strategies and tips. So we definitely will get into that more in the next time. So somebody else says, have the three of you ever thought of creating a YouTube channel?
You know, I have to say that there is a YouTube channel that would be really good for anybody at the event, and it's called Reimagining Dementia. It's an American group, but they do skits and songs. I was on last week and they were doing a song about, you know, that old song about there's a hole in the bucket, Dear Henry, Dear Henry. Well, they did it, and they were talking about the neurons, and the neurons weren't firing. It was absolutely hilarious, and it was an hour of just fun, and we need that. So look that up.
Reimagining Dementia.
Yes.
Wonderful.
I wrote it down, Myrna. I'm going to check it out. Yeah.
Good. And I have to, I talk way too much. I know, I'll be quiet after this, maybe.
No.
I'm going to be speaking with the Federal Minister of Health very soon, within the next 3 weeks. I'm sorry, I can't remember her name, but there's 16 of us with dementia that have been asked by Ottawa to speak to the minister. And I'm thinking this is about long-term care. And we all know how devastating that was for so many people. And we know that we need to make changes to people in long-term care, to forcing people in long-term care, and all that goes with that. So I'm really excited about that.
That's great.
That's great, Myrna. Great to hear.
People, sorry, Jim, go ahead.
No, I have nothing to add, and I think we should, hear any other questions from the group. I think it's good to provide information, but it's also helpful to the group to hear some of their burning questions.
So far, there hasn't been a lot of questions, mostly just so far, people just really expressing how valuable what you are saying is and how affirming what you are saying is. A couple of questions. Are strange behaviors that seem out of character a common sign of possible dementia? So I kind of like that one. I'm going to throw that out to the three of you, knowing that this is obviously not a diagnostic group, but so are strange behaviors that seem out of character a common sign of possible dementia?
I suspect that given the three of us that are here, it would be hard to differentiate. The before and the after, we were crazy before.
What a statesman. What a statesman. My goodness. One thing, I maybe just a quick mention, I think we touched on it, but remember that staying active will help your brain. So physical activity, walking, work out at the gym, drinking lots of water, modifying your diet makes a world of difference. And also, just along with that, Myrna, you mentioned it in a context. Music, they've proven music, music therapy or music for those who live with dementia, music for the world. But I have found, I was a musician years ago. Music is even more important to me now, especially when I'm in an anxious place. I put the music on while I'm doing stuff around the house or whatever. It's a wonderful calming effect. It doesn't mean that the music is calming. It might be something that's pretty wild, but it's stimulating. It's encouraging. It also brings back memories from the past, may do, with favorite music that we like. But yeah, I just encourage you, if you're looking for something that can assist, is music. It's wonderful. Absolutely amazing.
There's a gentleman, his name is Norm McNamara, and he's in Torbay, England. And he started a group called Purple Angels. And I actually offer a support group called Purple Angel Memory Support or something. I can't remember what I call it. Anyway, the story is this. He has been working for about 5 years to purchase headphones for people with dementia, especially those in care homes. It is now proven beyond belief that music calms the savage breast.
Breast. Yeah.
Breast. I always get that, I think beast or breast.
Beast,
anyway, they are actually using these headphones in ambulances in all areas of the hospitals. And they found, are you sitting down, that staff is not leaving to the degree they left before because things are so much calmer. The deal is that the Purple Angel supplies the headphone. The family sets up the music that the person that's going to use it, that the music that means the most to them, and then those headphones are given to the people. They have very simple off-on switches, so they're not complicated because I don't do complicated. And they're making an incredible headway. I haven't been able to get this happening in BC for whatever reason, but that's a really positive thing to do. Like you were just saying, Craig, it helps your soul. The music, whatever music it is. I prefer CCR. I want it loud and banging, and I want that CCR music. But we all have different requirements, and it's so important. Such an easy fix. Well, not a fix. Such an easy relaxation tool for us to offer to people with dementia. So much for I wasn't talking.
But I really want to point out that Lillian Hung, who in the photo, and I have done some research and others, but there is work continuing as far as the impact of music, but also as it relates to like acute care and in long-term care, and there's some really good work going on right now, some really good research going on, and she and I participated in some, have really it's gradually moving on from in breadth as far as the involvement of more and more people and solidifying the research. It's really, I think, really progressive and really positive.
That's awesome.
That's fabulous. All right, so we're just, oh goodness, this could just go on. I'd love to spend the whole afternoon with the three of you, but our time is drawing to an end. So if you have any questions about what you've heard today, especially after the webinar finishes, please don't hesitate to call our FirstLink Dementia helpline. Thank you all for spending part of your day with us today. Any last words, you three?
Well, I'm really happy that so many people attended the webinar, and that the three of us have had an opportunity to provide our thoughts on living with dementia and showing possibilities about living well with dementia, and some hopefully helpful information that will that people can take away, and the 6 degrees of separation, go off and tell others. And so thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Yes, I agree. I agree with you, Jim. Thank you for each of you. I don't know who all is there, but just very great. Wouldn't it be great if we were all in one room and we could just banter back and forth? But this will have to do. But thank you for spending time with us this afternoon.
Well, thank you again, you three.
Yeah.
This has been an absolute delight, and I look forward to our next time getting together.
Yeah.
Thanks. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.